Hello, my name is Nick Park and I'm the Executive Director of Evangelical Alliance Ireland, and this is our weekly message recorded on both audio and video entitled It's Friday but Sunday's Coming. Today I want to give a praise report for answered prayer. It seems like so many times over the last 15 months we've been sharing prayer requests and emphasizing how we need to pray for so many things during these unusual times that we've been living through. But today I want to give glory to God for answered prayer in some of the things that we have been interceding for over the last year or more. You see, all through the last year, I have been hearing people saying on social media and such like about how the suicide rates are going through the roof. I've seen Facebook posts claiming that there were 33 suicides in Ireland in a single week, and how because of the lockdowns, etc., the suicide rate has increased dramatically. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've not argued these figures that people have been quoting. I've not seen any evidence to support them, but I've not been arguing against them. The reason being because I've thought, well, that's quite likely. I would certainly understand it if the rates of suicide had gone up with all that's been going on, particularly for young people. This has been a tremendously difficult year. However, I've not passed those figures on or cited them myself without having evidence to back it up. Well, now the CSO has released their official figures for suicides in Ireland in the last year, in 2020. And it's quite amazing that actually the rate of suicide went down by 20% in 2020. Isn't that incredible? That in 2019, there were 421 suicides that we know of in Ireland, and in 2020 that reduced from 421 to 340 over the entire year. Now, of course, every suicide is an absolute tragedy, and you know what, if even you were saying there was only one, I know that that would still leave a sour taste, that statement, in the mouths of the family who lost a family member through the one. But nevertheless, while 340 suicides represent 340 absolute tragedies in our nation, the fact that it decreased by 20% during 2020 can only, as I see it, be attributed to answered prayer. The reason being, and that medical experts have agreed on this, there was an article written by Dr. Paul Corcoran in December 2020, released by the Health Research Board, that says the COVID-19 pandemic has led to an increase in a wide range of risk factors for suicidal behavior. And I don't think any of us would argue with that. So why is it, and people are asking this question, why is it that even though the risk factors were much greater for suicide in 2020, that the number of actual suicides, contrary to what everyone was saying, went down by 20%? And I believe that prayer is the reason why. Because the church has been praying in Ireland. You know, that's one thing. I mean, it's not been an easy year. And sometimes the way some people have reacted to it and the way some Christians have reacted to it hasn't been great. But can I tell you, there's been an awful lot of good that has come out of the church in this past year. A lot of innovation and a lot of prayer. And I have seen more prayer initiatives, more prayer days, more of the church praying than I've ever seen before in my lifetime. And it's been wonderful. And the fact is that prayers are being answered. That should not surprise us. We should expect prayers to be answered. As we've seen, the suicides have gone down when we would have expected them, humanly speaking, to have gone up. Of course, there have been the tragic deaths, almost 5,000 tragic deaths through COVID-19. But those deaths in Ireland have actually been much less than in most other European countries. You know, we look at our neighbours in the UK, we look at Belgium, we look at Italy, we look at Poland. The death rate from COVID in those countries has been double what it has been in Ireland. And also other European countries, much higher death rates in Spain, in France, in Portugal, Lithuania, Romania, Sweden, Latvia, Austria, Greece, Germany, the Netherlands. All these countries have had higher death rates than Ireland. And of course, it's not a competition, but we've been praying for our nation. And I believe that the Irish church has really got involved in prayer in a way that is truly inspiring. So it should not surprise us. Now, yes, there's public health measures, there's everything else. And we may not always agree with all the public health measures and how they've been implemented and when they've been implemented. And there have been failures, as evidenced by, for example, just how many of those 5,000 deaths occurred in our nursing homes, where there was a total unacceptable loss of life. But in fact, if you look at Western Europe, the only countries in Western Europe that have a lower death rate from COVID than Ireland are Estonia, and then the Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Finland, and Norway. There are particular demographic reasons why those Scandinavian nations, which did actually have quite strict policies and therefore did so much better than Sweden, but there is reasons why they have had very low death rates that are entirely understandable. But actually, in Ireland, the loss of life that we've suffered has been less than what we probably might have expected, given this pandemic that we've been living through. You see, prayer is powerful. And I do believe that we've had a major change in the Irish church when it comes to prayer. And this is where it's so important that we don't stop. Now that we're coming out of this thing, now that we're seeing such signs of progress, now as a nation, we're starting to return to many aspects of life that haven't taken place for a long time. It's so important that we don't stop praying. So will the church keep praying now that COVID is beginning to pass? Will we see the Irish church still being a church of prayer? I believe we will. Let me just share a very personal experience from the church that I pastor, our church in Drogheda, back at St. Patrick's Day in 2020, decided that we would pray all for 24 hours for St. Patrick's Day. And so we did that. And we kept praying. We've been praying ever since. We've been praying 24. We have an online rota. People sign up for it. And we've been praying online 24 hours a day for over a year now. Now, whenever we were coming out of this latest lockdown, I'm going to confess a bit of lack of faith here. I said to my wife, you realize it might be a bit harder to maintain this. You know, at the moment, everybody's at home and off work. And once people start to go back to work and stuff, they may not have as much time to sign up to cover the prayer. And it might be a bit of a struggle. Now, let me just say that when you organize a church to do 24-hour prayer, it's not something that's just a dawdle. The pastors, the leaders, have to really be prepared to pray and sometimes to stand in the gap. Many times, myself and my wife, we've stood in the gap in the early hours of the morning. There's been an empty slot in the rota, and so we've set the alarm for 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever, and got up and prayed. Still been tremendously impressed by how many other people are praying in the early hours of the morning, but we've had to do that. But the amazing thing is, since the end of this last lockdown, we've actually had to do that less and less because we're seeing people praying more and more. And I'm full of excitement and I'm full of hope that this wave of prayer that we've seen across the Irish church was not just something we did during COVID only to stop it whenever the crisis is over, but rather that it's something we'll continue, and that the Irish church will continue to be a church that prays and prays consistently and prays faithfully and prays effectively. And I would just encourage you, whether you're a church leader, whether you're a member of a church, stir up the gift that is within you and let's continue to be a people of prayer. We give thanks to God for answered prayer as evidenced in these news reports that I'm referring to today. And yet, we have more and greater things to come. And I believe we'll see more and more powerful answers to prayer in the future as we continue to be a praying church here in Ireland. God bless you as we look forward to the future together. It might be Friday, but Sunday's coming.